Awesome. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. We're super excited to have you here. While we're waiting for folks to pop in into Zoom, we'd like to invite you to introduce yourself in the chat. So if you want to state your name, your organization, and why you're interested in joining us today, we'd love to hear from you. Thank you all so much for choosing to round out your day with us. On behalf of the Data Science Government Coalition, welcome to What You Need to Know About Data Science Education, Leveraging National Academies Research. My name is Eric Drozda. I am the Program Director for Data Science for Everyone. For a little bit about DS-Free, we are a national initiative, coalition, and community based at the University of Chicago, striving to catalyze the adoption of data science and data literacy as a basic component of K-12 education. We began our work under the leadership of economist and Freakonomics co-author Steve Levitt back in 2019. It has since grown to a national movement with 2,600 plus education leaders in many states and districts around the country who are all working together to bring these opportunities to our students everywhere. We currently work on four things, or core four pillars: raising awareness, gathering and catalyzing classroom resources, community building, and then policy as it relates to data science education. I'm so excited for today's conversation because we are thrilled to have a slate of experts who all participated last fall in the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine workshop on K-12 data science education. A huge thanks to our colleagues at the National Academies for convening that workshop and the hard work you put into publishing the workshop proceedings, which is an incredible report, and I recommend you all check it out when you get a moment, and which is also will be the basis for our conversation today. In a moment, I'm going to turn this conversation over to Tricia Shelton, who is the Chief Learning Officer at the National Science Teaching Association. We are also joined by Hollylynne Lee, Distinguished Professor of Mathematics and Statistics Education at North Carolina State University, Leticia Perez, Development Lead at West Ed, and Paul Strode, Teacher of High School Biology at Fairview High School. I also want to make a quick plug that we'd love to see you all participate in our lesson plan challenge that is currently open and accepting entries. All educators who submit a high quality lesson plan demonstrating how data can draw connections between subjects will receive a small stipend, and we'll also have a grand prize available for winning submissions of up to $2,000. We will drop a link for more information in the chat for how to get involved in that opportunity. The deadline is May 7th, so it's coming up, but we'd love to see more folks get involved in that opportunity with us. Before beginning the event, I also wanted to remind everyone about the DS-Free community standards. We believe everyone belongs in the data future and that healthy debate is productive and beneficial for everyone. We welcome coalition members from all walks of life and those with diverse viewpoints, and to ensure a robust and supportive participation in the organization as a whole and in DS-Free events. All participants in organizational leadership will be held to a code of conduct that creates an environment of respect, inclusion, and effective communication. You can learn more about the community standards, including how to report any violations or issues, on our website. And a member of our team will drop that link in the chat shortly. So with all that out of the way, I'll now pass the floor to Tricia to kick us off the conversation.
Thanks so much, Zarek. I'm thrilled and honored to be part of this event today, and really excited to host three fantastic data science education advocates that will give us a lot of diverse perspectives. So before we jump into the Q&A part of our event, I'd love if Hollylynne, Paul, and Leticia would introduce themselves by sharing their role and where they're from, and what innovation or development in data science they're most excited about. So let's kick it off with Hollylynne.
Hi, so I'm Hollylynne Lee. I started out as a middle school and high school math teacher, and then transitioned through my PhD work to become a mathematics teacher educator. But I always had a love for statistics and probability and data. And learning with technology. And so as my career has developed, I have become more hyper-focused on the teaching and learning of statistics, probability, and data science, particularly with technology. So my day job is working as a teacher educator at the undergraduate level, but I do a lot of work in pre-service. So at the pre-service level, I do a lot of work in in-service teacher preparation and designing, particularly online. I have offered a lot of MOOCs, massive open online courses for teachers to come in and engage and kind of think about what it means to teach statistics and from a data enabled perspective. And those started in 2014. And we just launched my research group at NC State just launched a new online professional learning platform. So we're very excited about that. So that's an innovation that we're very excited about of how to get teachers access to high quality learning opportunities, and especially in districts where they might not have those opportunities. But one of the things that I'm most excited about is the fact that I think today's youth are advocates for themselves and are advocates for others, and data can help them bring voice to the causes that they care about and the changes that they want to make in this world. And I think that it's this nice really marriage of we have the youth that are going to be energized by data, and we have these opportunity to give them more learning opportunities with data. And I'm excited about seeing the future of the citizens that they're going to become because of the opportunities that we give them for thinking with data.
Thank you, Hollylynne. That is really quite lovely. So I'm going to pass it to you, Paul. If you could share with us what your role is, where you're from, and what is your innovation or development in data science that gets you the most excited?
Well, I am originally from northeastern Indiana, a small town called North Manchester, where I grew up and went to college. I'm currently a high school biology, anatomy and physiology and science research teacher at Fairview High School in Boulder, Colorado. I am different from Hollylynne. I had a fear of statistics and data. And so much of a fear that I avoided taking a course that I think was the only statistics course at my college called Probability and Statistics. It was also offered at 8 o'clock in the morning, Monday through Friday. So not a very popular choice, especially for an upperclassman. But after 8 years of teaching high school, I went to grad school for a PhD, and it was there that I was forced to learn statistics, to analyze my own data that I was generating. And what I realized that I needed to do was pull back the curtain of the operations, all of the math going on behind the scenes. And what I realized in doing that, as I went back to teaching high school after finishing my doctorate, was that it's just math. If students can do simple mathematical operations like add, subtract, multiply, divide, square, and square root, they can do a lot of the complex inferential statistical analyses that I was so afraid of. And I can talk more a bit later about how I developed that understanding of my students in my science curricula.
Thank you so much, Paul. And Leticia, your turn. Could you introduce yourself and what gets you excited about data science?
Good afternoon or evening, depending where, or maybe morning, depending where you're calling from. My name is Leticia Perez, and I am actually with Making Sense of Science. It's a group of professional learning supports at West Ed. And I am a former high school integrated science and AP environmental science teacher. And so after 9 years in the classroom, I started working on being exposed to really like this idea of participatory sensing and computational thinking, and how do we get more data, authentic data, into the classrooms. And this whole other universe opened up. And so I was in the right place at the right time, asking questions about, well, what does argumentation really mean? And what do you mean data? And when does data become evidence? And trying to grapple with all of these science and engineering practices. So I think one of the things that, a little bit to what Hollylynne said, something that I'm really excited about are students today love technology and they are deeply aware of data. A lot of the things that maybe some of us might be wary of or scared of bringing into the classroom, I have a 10 and 14-year-old at home, and they use data to pick the right combinations for their video games so they can maximize play. And they're reading data science blogs, trying to get an edge. And when they're really interested in a topic, data is something that they reach for to understand and describe the world around them. And so I'm just really passionate about learning from students and learning from teachers about what are those things, and then how do we bring those things in alignment to some of our curricular goals so we can do double duty.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And we heard from our diverse experiences and roles of our participants, and a little bit about the why, the how, and the relevancy there. Really excited about that. Before we jump into our Q&A, I'm gonna also honor, we have all of these participants today and the experiences and excitement that they bring. And I'm really excited already to see all those comments in the chat. I'm gonna pull a quote that I pulled out of the proceedings that came out of that workshop that Zarek referenced at the beginning. I really encourage you to check that out, but talked about data science being in its infancy, and that being an opportunity to shape it in a way that will best serve our future citizens. And I hear like I have lots of things written down on my desk, but that's a little bit what I gravitated to when I heard the lovely opening remarks from this panel. So I'm super excited for the participants today to hear more from the panel, but I also encourage the participants to drop questions and thinking into the chat as well. So let's get started with our first question. And each of our panelists are going to have a response to this question, but I'm going to start with Paul this time. So Paul, we talk a lot about the definitions in general in education a lot. And when we're specifically talking about this topic of data science, can you describe some of the key characteristics that may define data science specific to a K-12 classroom?
Well, I just actually coincidentally put my definitions of data literacy and data science in the chat, but I don't think my definition of data science is any different from how you would define it in a second grade classroom or in a career, as just the process and techniques of working with data. But to be able to work with data, you need to be data literate. And so in being data literate, you have to be able to collect and organize and visualize and analyze and interpret data, and you have to be able to share data so that others understand and can use what you've found, and so that you can use and understand what you found with your working with data. Did I answer the question? Sometimes I forget what the question was as I
No, I thought that was a wonderful answer that and also I'm sure that the participants also appreciate that. Drop into the chat. Leticia, can you build on that, or do you have a different lens towards thinking about the definitions and the characteristics of data science?
It's funny, I was thinking about how much my definition keeps moving and changing. And I think that's a reflection of a few things. One, data science, the field, thinking about what does data science mean for a kindergartner versus a fifth grader, and thinking about a progression, but also thinking about what does it mean for the technology that's evolving right now as we start to see tools like Perplexity AI and this Rabbit researcher, as we start to have these new tools that help us visualize and make sense of large amounts of data. Like, well, what does my definition of data science hold up for the world that is going to exist in 4 years? So I think of a couple of terms and recognizing that there's still kind of some movement. And one thing that I've been recently wondering, so this isn't going to answer your question, but is like, to whom does data fluency or data literacy serve, and to whom does data science serve? So one of the things that I've been thinking about is being able to use data for my personal life, my professional life in ways that are meaningful. And I'm the one deciding the direction of my investigation versus maybe the data work that I'm doing is in the service of someone else or for something else, for biology, or in the service for my employer. And so really, I think data science, we still have a ways to go and to decide what data science is for education versus maybe data science as a broader field. And I'm excited to see where we land here.
Thank you. Hollylynne, how about your response to this question?
Yeah, so one of the things that, so I agree that there's kind of this continuum from kind of data fluency, data literacy to data science, and that, you know, that we do need all of our students to be fluent with data, and we want them to be able to use that both for their personal decision making, but also being able to be literate enough to know when others are making or presenting an argument or presenting a decision or presenting a graphic, to know when to say, I'm not sure about that, or to be able to question that, and or to know when they can have enough confidence in any claims that are being made. And so one of the things that I did back in 2018 that was one of the best professional things that I had an opportunity to do is, as the field of data science was increasing a lot, I got an opportunity with RTI International to spend half of my time. So they bought me out of half my time at NC State because I was curious about, well, what do data scientists do in industry? All right, if I'm going to be a teacher educator and I'm going to educate people and I'm going to create curriculum materials around data science, I think I need a better handle on seeing what that actually looks like. And so I got to spend a year with them, and you know, that immersive experience of being with data scientists as they were trying to work in teams and solve problems there, I came away with some characteristics that, going back to your question, Trish, that I think are really kind of important. And my group tried to synthesize those into a framework that guides a lot of the work that we do. And you know, this ties back into a point that Paul made earlier about data science is a lot about kind of the techniques and processes that are being used, but it's also about the dispositions and the kind of habits of mind that data scientists use when they're working with data. And so one of the things that I'm going to put in here is a classroom ready poster that we created that just kind of synthesizes some of the key processes that happens when you're doing a data investigation. All right. And you know, for me, a characteristic of when you're doing data science in schools is that you're actually giving students an opportunity to engage in all 6 of these different processes. If you're only having students look at a set of data and compute the mean, or perform a linear regression, or, you know, make assumptions about the normal distribution and then apply some inference to it, you're not doing data science. All right. But if you're having students work with bigger data, multiple variables, and they've got to decide what questions, how can I use this secondary data? Because a lot of data science comes from using data that the data scientists did not collect themselves. All right. So they have to know, how do I take data that was collected by someone else? Maybe I had some input on how that was collected, but collected by somebody else. And how do I make sense of what those measures are, what it actually is? And I saw data scientists deeply going back to those content experts of whatever problem they were trying to solve to make sense of, what does this variable really mean? What was actually measured here? Because I can't say anything. I can't give you any help if I don't know how it was measured. And that simple thing right there, we start in elementary school when we are getting students to start thinking about measuring something and understanding how to categorize different things. And so the idea of measurement and the idea of sorting things by categories, that's the beginning of data in elementary school. And I would say that it may not look like or sound like data science at that point, but those are the seeds and the experiences and the conceptual ideas that are going to be critical for taking that learner to be able to understand things at a bigger range. So I could say a lot more, but I'll stop.
Thank you so much, Hollylynne. And a through line that I heard amongst all three answers was that the user and how they're using that data for good to figure out, which I love that you just said, Hollylynne, that in my work at figuring out in the world. And I think that also gets us a little bit to where the rubber meets the road, like from where we started that big why and that energy. So I'm going to make the jump that the attendees at this event are your all's passion is translating to them. And really that the National Academies workshop that Zarek and I have been referring to, that we hope that you check out the proceedings that happened last fall. It demarcated a milestone for gathering evidence and research in the field of data science education. As we think about the learning in that proceedings and the learning from today and the early research and practitioner experiences to draw from, what are some key takeaways or learnings that teachers who might want to tackle this could take into their classrooms next school year? That I think that you started that conversation, Hollylynne. I'm going to pass it to Leticia and see what you can add. What can teachers take into their classrooms right now?
So I think building off of Hollylynne's a model, I think, there's some ideas about how we have to approach data. And I think we need to be careful about getting stuck into certain approaches, like argumentation is always claims, evidence, reasoning. I always start with an investigative statistical question. So I think the first thing is to really think about where our data in the students' lives and in our subjects in classrooms, and have like a willingness to approach this data from a lot of different perspectives. And a lot of data scientists, they did not collect the data. Absolutely. They are really complex, large data sets that they're interacting with, and they need to have time playing with data. Students need more time, just like the data scientists need time, of interacting, exploring, making discoveries, asking questions from the data and through the data, and using that as the springboard. And so I think my first thing would be more complex data. Let's move away from like bivariate data sets. Let's start having data sets that are deeper, a lot more cases, have a lot more attributes, encouraging students to pursue questions of interest that arise from exploring the data. And we have to be leveraging computational tools. We really need to be thinking about what are some low floor, high ceiling tools that allow students to make those discoveries. They want to use technology, they want to interact and make compelling visualizations. And I'm a big fan of data storytelling. So what stories can we tell with data about the world around us?
Thank you, Leticia. And I'm going to turn it over to Paul and also encourage the participants. I see this robust chat going on. Thank you so much. In that call, Leticia, to really get large data sets in front of kids, if people in the audience have ideas about where they've accessed some of these large data sets or certain computational tools they're using, we encourage you to share that information with the rest of us in the chat. That would be great. So turning to you, Paul, what are some key takeaways or learnings for teachers who want to tackle this that you might suggest?
Yes. Well, first of all, I want to agree enthusiastically with what Leticia said, and I want to add that as a public school teacher, we need to be extremely careful how we roll out or engage teachers with new curricula, new ideas about data science, because teachers can be quickly overwhelmed with new things. And so I think the best strategy, and we actually did this at my school before the National Academy of Sciences workshop in September. I had all of my science department members and the math department look at the next generation science standards at Science and Engineering Practices 4 and 5, which for our viewers are analyzing and interpreting data. That's number 4, and then mathematical and computational thinking is number 5. I had them look at the NGSS for high school and identify examples in their curricula where they were already doing data science, where they were already working on data literacy, and it was a really good exercise. And so if we can help teachers first identify, what are you already doing that's working really well? What are you already doing that is this new shiny thing that we're presenting to you? Then I think we can really engage them in the conversation. But if we come at them with hey, here's data science, we need to start preparing our students for these careers, it's gonna go nowhere.
Thank you, Paul. I love that galvanizing advice. Hollylynne, what would you, circling back to you, what else would you add build on what you shared before that teachers could
so I
right
actually
away?
want to build off of what Paul just said, because I love the idea of the science department kind of looking at this and seeing where do you already do this. And I have worked with so many math teachers, and time again, when teachers are stressed and teachers are busy and they have to cut something out of the curriculum because of time, the thing that gets cut most often is statistics and probability. All right. And I've actually done some mapping with math teachers to say, well, when you cut this is the stuff they do in science that now your students are not as prepared to do this over here in the science curriculum or in the social studies curriculum, and so here's the ramification. It's not just because it wasn't on, you didn't think that it was going to be valued on your end of grade test, so it was okay to skip it. Here's the ramifications of skipping that content, and I think that particularly at the high school level, we need those disciplinary teachers talking more to each other. Now, I know interdisciplinary planning at the high school level is a tough thing to tackle, but at least some conversations of having this, doing some professional learning where they're looking at a same data set and seeing the kinds of ways that they could actually tackle their content through playing with a certain kind of data set, and I completely agree with Leticia that I have videos after videos after videos of students playing with data and the kind of discoveries and the excitement that happens in that room. You do not have to convince a kid very hard at all to get engaged in that lesson. So.
Thank you. So I love that we started with the beginning of the road. So what if you're currently teaching a data science class, or you have data analysis, as several of you have referenced, already integrated into some of your lesson material? How can teachers be thinking about continuous improvement or using the research, which it's coming out as this field grows, to make their programs better? And so I'm going to ask Paul if you would start us off with that particular question. So
the question is, how can teachers say that again? How can teachers improve?
So we've sold them. They're passionate. They tried some things. They've seen some of those intersections, like the example you just gave of things they're already doing. So what is it that is being discussed and has come out that those teachers, now that we already have, that they tried it out, what's the next step for them and how they can continue to integrate? Or if they're already teaching a data science class, like what are that idea that the learning's never done in the adult level either, like what's the next step for folks that are already engaged?
Well, for folks that are already engaged, just the new tools for students to analyze and visualize data are exceptional. In my classes, I use Data Classroom, which I've used for 3 years now, and I've been using it ever since it was in its infancy, and my students love it. They use it in other classes as well, not just my class. And that's one of many tools that students can use. But I think that that there are, I wish I had a number, but my guess is that it's a majority of teachers out there, especially science teachers, that really have no idea how data analysis works. And so we need professional development a lot and quickly if we're going to respond to this future of data science and careers in data science. Because there's a lot of fear, teachers might be teaching statistics, but really not know, as I said earlier, what's behind the curtain. I think that's key in understanding what it is you're looking at when you're looking at the output of analysis of variance. If you don't know how those fancy numbers were calculated, then it's not going to make much sense to you.
Thank you, Paul. Leticia, what would you add in for continuous improvement? Paul just mentioned a few things, professional development tools. Can you expand on that or add in another consideration?
Sure. I think I probably would think about 3 categories. One is student agency. Where are we giving students more choice, more voice, more opportunities to display their thinking in rich ways that are important to them in their community? Really thinking about, are we giving students an opportunity to reflect on the dispositions that they're developing working with the data? Are we asking them to consider the ethical implications and reflecting on, like, what does this data mean to me? How might it impact my community? Who's in this data set? Who's missing? Like asking those questions and having time to reflect and share that we might have different perspectives when it comes to the data. So having those important conversations. So we need lots of times to play. We need a lot of time to communicate and think about it. If we do data, that's often the piece that gets cut off, right? Is that communication piece, which is the purpose piece. I think the other big area is the idea of making sense across multiple representations. So often in science and math, we create a single representation and then we ask, like, well, interpret this plot. But really in science, even though the analyzing standard science and engineering practices are narrow, in order to describe and explain a phenomenon, you're going to need to draw on evidence across multiple representations to really create a robust argument as to what is happening. So giving students the opportunity to make multiple representations and asking them to synthesize that is a really important step if we're trying to move away just from an accurate interpretation towards data science.
Thank you. I hear that student ideas piece come out in a lot of ways in your response. Hollylynne, how would you summarize that cleanup here for us, that continuous improvement or using research to make one's program better?
Yeah, so I would encourage people to actually look at, so go to, if you're already trying things and you're seeing some of the excitement, all right, use the journals, all right, use the science teacher journal, use the MTLT journal from NCTM, use the statistics teacher journal or teaching statistics journal, and get those good activities and try them out. Go to the Data Science for Everyone website and look for some different resources that you can use for yourself. Some of these have been vetted, things that are in journals are things that folks have tried in their classroom. Think about contributing to that. So as Zarek was saying, participating in that lesson plan competition. If you've been trying things, then think about not only the one way to grow professionally yourself is to think about how to share what you have been learning with others. Invite others into your classroom. have those conversations. Join some online communities like this. I think many of you are here because you want to engage with others. And, and if you want to do some online professional learning with our new platform, I will put my plug in for our In Step with Data online platform, because we're purposely trying to design this, and we will be continually, unlike a MOOC where there is a set curriculum that stays the same. InStep will continue to grow as contributors add new modules for learning. And so our hope is that teachers there's something for the beginner and there's something for the more advanced teacher. And as you try new things, we have a recommendation engine, kind of like Amazon's recommendation engine, to say, if you answer a couple survey questions and we know some things about you, we can recommend different learning modules that might meet you where you are and take you to that next step. So, it's a way to empower you as an individual learner, and join it with a group and have fun with it.
Thank you, Hollylynne. Leticia, what do you want to jump in?
Yeah, if I might, knowing the load and the amount of work that is on teachers' plate, I do want to say, for those that are maybe just starting or wondering where they can do more, I think about all of these textbooks that are like maybe collecting dust in the back of spaces that have these beautiful color printed graphics. Can we ask students to look at these models and these visualizations and critique them? Who has access to this information? Does it align up to the text? Can you imagine, how would you present it in a different way? If we could think about also, some things in the chat were about, this is a lot when we open it up and we have student agency. Now there's a lot more things that we have to be attentive to. But what are some intermediate guided inquiry steps that we've learned through science instruction that we can employ in data science? Maybe I'm just offering 3 or 4 claims and students are interrogating whether the data supports the claims and to what extent. Maybe I'm doing some strength of evidence kind of conversations. So it's not completely wide open. We can give more agency without having to pursue every single option and road.
Thank you. And Leticia, would you be willing, there's a lot of conversation in the chat specific to high school data science courses. So if we were thinking about that stakeholder group, what some helpful resources are, and this is to the rest of the panel after Leticia. And also, if you want to pick this one up, how essential is coding as a tool or a skill needed by teachers to support students in doing data science work at the high school level?
Hollylynne, you want to start?
I just came from teaching a data and chance class. For this semester, I'm at Baylor University and I'm teaching a data and chance class to elementary and middle school future teachers. And I just came from a lesson where we were building a simulation. I'm not going to get into what the problem was, but they had to do some simple formulas to write an if, then, else statement, to be able to turn values that we had simulated into whether it was generating a male or a female result. All right. And teaching them just the logic of an if then else statement and then how to write it is the beginning of coding. You don't have to know. I don't think you have to say you have to learn a whole language to code in data science. You need to be able to write functions and formulas in Excel and in other kinds of software. We were using Kodak, you need to be able to understand the logic and the syntax. And so that's the key kind of coding that is required. All right. It's not, you've got to learn how, you need to know the entire Python language in order to be working in data science. You need to understand that syntax matters and that logic statements matter and that how do we put things together matter. And have some experiences with that. So I'll let Leticia go.
And I think that might be a helpful place to consider maybe moving from primary to secondary spaces. when we think about making data visualizations that we're really interested in or that are best going to communicate aspects of the data, a lot of times we need to do some transforms and do some data moves on that data. And maybe that's by needing to do some computation, right? So I measured the distance and the time. That's not really helpful. I really want to tell the story about speed, or maybe I'm doing some velocity work. And so how can we use syntax to do the work for us so we can get to our goal, which is to communicate our findings, or to discover those findings and communicate them. So I think one of the pieces is to ensure that students are being equipped to implement that computational thinking for the purposes of data, right? So a lot of the computational thinking conversation is really often constrained to like procedural processes and code, and that's great. And we can also think about, how does decomposition show up when we are working with data? How do we think about abstraction in the form of data? So a plot is an abstraction of the data. There are features that are hidden now because I've removed them. So how do we surface that computational thinking explicitly? So students who are taking data science and then maybe going to AP computer science are starting to make those connections that are going to better position them if they want to pursue data science related fields. So I think those are some steps for those that are in the high school space to really explore. And usually the data science teacher is not the computer science teacher. So you might, if you're a solo person, like those are folks that you want to connect with. Because you're probably the only math teacher that's teaching that, and the only computer science teacher. If you haven't connected, I definitely would recommend that you seek those out in your district.
Thank you. Paul, what would you add to some helpful high school resources, or we just had a lot of conversation there around tools?
High school resources, well, for the student or the teacher. For me personally, as the teacher, one of my favorite books is a textbook by Whitlock and Schluter called The Analysis of Biological Data. It's just an excellent textbook. I've learned so much from it. And maybe it's just me, I enjoy reading textbooks. But for me, that's been an essential resource in the last few years to really wrap my head around just basic data and error analysis. And speaking to that, I don't want us to lose sight of the simple operations of data and error analysis, and making sure that students, again, understand what's behind the curtain. And so as they take measurements, how do they quantify uncertainty in that sample? And what are the steps? And why do we take that step? Why do we take the squared difference of each measurement from the mean? What does it do for us when we sum those up? Why divide by the degrees of freedom? What does that tell us? Where do we go from there? How do we interpret a standard error of the mean error bar? Those are, I think, critical data literacy components that students have to have a good handle on before they can really, dive into the coding part of doing data science.
Thank you, Paul. We've spent a lot of our conversation today talking about the practice side, and if we think of the intersection between research, policy, and practice, I'm going to throw out the other two sides of that coin, research and policy, and to our panelists, maybe choose which one that you'd like to respond to first. But on the research side, I want to think about resources available to help educators partner with academic researchers. I always find that partnership so incredibly empowering, especially when you have an up-and-coming, as described in September, field in its infancy, like data science. So what are some resources that help that partnership? Or thinking on policy side, how do you see data science being supported through legislation, policy, standards, PD, and of course, then on the policy side, hopefully funding. So choose your side of the coin there, research or policy. Hollylynne, I'd like to start with you.
Okay, Trish, I'm going to be honest. I kind of got lost in what you wanted me to talk about. So
would you like to talk about policy and how you see data science being supported, or hopefully supported, or not being supported by legislation, funding, all of those pieces of the system? Did you want to speak to that, or are you more excited to speak about the potential for educators to have some resources, opportunities to partner with researchers to try to figure out that side of that intersection between policy, research, and practice? We've talked a lot about practice, but research informs that practice, and you really need to have the system to be able to be successful. So I think I know where you might go, but I wanted to give you the option.
So
policy or research.
Yeah, so as a researcher, I'll go ahead and start with the research. I mean, so research partnerships are incredibly important at this point. So there are states, and many of you are probably on this call, that are creating new courses called Intro to Data Science, or have already had them. California has had it for a while, and so they're introducing these new courses, and or there's curriculum work to integrate more data into different courses. And it's really across disciplines, like, Paul is talking about what's happening in his science course, in his science department. But we need those partnerships to really understand when kids have these opportunities to be working with the data, what are they thinking about? I think that there is research out there from different disciplines. And I think this is where it makes understanding the research landscape in data science ed a little bit more difficult, because we have to look in so many different directions to see the research. But I think in the end, it makes it richer. All right. So, but we just have to continue to look in all those different directions. But I think being able to partner with an organization like WestEd, with a research group that has the capacity, that can go after some grants, which is then intersects with policy, so that we can actually study the system of, all right, when we try these things out, what works and what doesn't. So I think that we're trying a lot of things right now in the space of data literacy and data science, and some of it works better. I mean, some of it is going to work better than others. All right. And so how can we better understand that, so that we can use a system of continual improvement, so that the not only the curriculum changes, but as we have more research evidence, then we can convince the policymakers more of, okay, so, yes, this is possible. So maybe we should be allowing students to use these types of requirements for a high school graduation, et cetera. So I think that it's those reaching out and establishing partnerships. And I think that it all comes down to what's working with the students.
Thank you, Hollylynne. Leticia, what would you add to that?
I think practically, when I was a teacher, well, this is still my dream. My dream is to be in the classroom to 2 periods a day, and then have some researchers and be able to move back and forth where the rooms are connected. It hasn't happened yet, but I'm still hopeful. One of the ways that I found myself into this world is by participating in pilots. So as educators, when you see calls for professional development or professional learning, and they're saying, we're piloting this, it usually means it's a research grant. And so in case you're not familiar with that nomenclature, I know we have a pilot in June, for example, where we're looking at bringing math and science middle school and 6th through 9th grade teachers together to see, like, how do we think about variability different across the disciplines, and what are the implications for our different kind of formal and informal notions of variation. So like there's a pilot where we're trying to do some of this work. So definitely look for pilots. I'm going to mention that NCTM's got some data science opportunities for teachers to maybe connect with folks who are doing that research, who are investigating those questions end of October this year. And then don't underestimate the opportunity at your local level. We have, your TOSAs, your science and math leaders at your school sites and districts and school boards, being able to advocate for the role of data, that we need to bring folks in from, the data science community into those spaces to be able to talk about why it's so important.
Awesome. Paul, I'm going to switch to you and see if you'd like to share into this discussion in research or policy, and if you have any examples of data science education research that you've had the opportunity to be involved in, or even do, like I believe teachers do research in their classroom all the time from year to year. It certainly sounds like you've evolved your thinking over time around data science. If you could share to that, we would be much appreciative.
Well, yeah, teaching is every day an uncontrolled experiment in itself. So we as teachers are constantly collecting data and reacting to those data as we go through each day and week and year. As far as policy goes, the way that I look at policy is through like state mandated standards. And so, for example, Colorado has their state science standards, and they're as many states. In fact, I think most states now are heavily based on the next generation science standards. And so to me, that's the charge, the mandate. And I think as a public school teacher, I think I'm required by law to make sure that I am teaching to the standards. And so I have to make sure I understand the standards and that they're showing up in my classroom in various ways. So that's where I see that's where I see policy. With research, I've two kind of different answers. One, I think that we need much better vertical teaming, K through 16. With educators. It's unfortunate, but I think it's the norm for there to be almost no communication between a 5th grade teacher at an elementary school and a 7th grade teacher at a middle school and a 11th grade teacher at a high school and a college instructor. No one's talking to each other. And yet at each level we're looking at, okay, what do my students know, and what do I need to do to get them to where they need to be at the end of the school year. And so I don't know that really answers the researcher question, but it certainly is important for us to have that vertical understanding of the student's experience. I mean, we need to keep the students in mind here. They're the most important part of the equation, and if they don't feel like they're being brought along at each level by teachers that understand where they've been and where they're going, then I think it's malpractice. Let's see, what else did I have to say? I can't remember. It was something really important, though.
Well, if you think of it, we're going to enter the lightning round.
Okay.
Paul, I encourage you to add it to the lightning round. We have about 3 minutes left. So if that thought comes back, Paul, please share with us, because now we're on the edge of our seats. But for all of us, what are the most important next steps to make progress? We'll wrap up our Q&A, pass it back to Zarek after we hear from each of our panelists. So I'm going to start with you, Hollylynne. What are the most important next steps to make progress?
I think you just do it. Like, so I think you have to just, partner with somebody, find a good data set, try something out in your class, see how it works firsthand. Don't be afraid, jump in and, do something powerful with your students that, might be a little scary for you, but, will in the end kind of lead to some interesting conversations in your classroom, and find out who you can collaborate with. We see that in the chat. I mean, partner with somebody, even if it's the teacher next door. Start small and go big.
I love that. Start small, go big. Okay, Leticia, I'm going to give Paul a little bit more time to think of that thought and pass it to you.
Yes, I think maybe de-silo our thinking, right? So our content might not mean what we think it means for this generation. And so have that sense of exploration and give yourself permission to wonder and learn alongside your students. They'll teach you so much, and it'll be a great opportunity.
Thank you. And Paul, I love that we get to kind of bookend it. I love bookends. You gave us a lot of the why in your story of inspiration at the beginning. So you're going to be the final word here. What are the next steps to make progress?
Well, I've got one more why, and that was the thing that I had forgotten before. But I think we need to make sure we understand that most of the students that go through our science education, data science education curricula, math education curricula, are not going to have careers in data science, but they all will be voters and citizens in a democracy, and they all will be required in various ways to process data and understand data and analyze and be skeptical of data visualizations and what they're being told about data and about phenomena. And so so to me, those people may be more important than the ones that are already really jazzed about data and are going to go into careers and et cetera. It's the others that are going to be our voting citizens.
Thank you, Paul. And this has just been so delightful. Thank you so much to our panelists. I'm going to pass it back to Zarek to bring us home.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. I'm feeling super energized after this conversation. Look, like this work takes energy, right? And pushing on the system takes a lot of energy. And I just, I'm so grateful for you all to coming together today to just really just help inspire us, right? And help us push forward. So huge thank you to our panelists for giving us some actual takeaways, both from the convening that we had last fall with facilitated by the National Academies, and also just for the great conversation today. My charge to the audience, we want to keep the conversation going and we want to get you all involved in this work. A few ways to do that through our channels, where we have a Slack, newsletter, LinkedIn, Twitter, lots of different ways to get engaged in the community. Would especially recommend the Slack. It's a very active space for folks. Would love for everyone to get involved, and through the other channels of our participants here, right? So get involved in NSTA, get involved in Hollylynne's new project at NC State, get involved with WestEd, and try to learn some, take some takeaways from Paul's program in your teaching experience there. Also, have an exciting announcement for our next event at Paths to Data Science Strategies for Your State on May 22nd at 5 p.m. Eastern. Our team will drop a registration link in the chat, and it will extend the conversation we had today a little bit around policy and systems change. I'm really excited to pull that group together of also really amazing speakers. Do also remember to visit our resource center. It's growing fast, and we'll likely be reorganizing it soon to just keep up with the pace of the many new instructional materials and resources that are being developed for the space. And remember to follow all of our partners here at NSTA, WestEd, NC State, and the National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicine for more resources in this field as we all work together to build more resources to teach data science and literacy everywhere. Want to just finally, if you requested a certificate of completion for the event today, one will be emailed to you in the coming days. And we're always super happy to connect. So please don't hesitate to reach out with anything that we can help with and partner on. have a great rest of your day and or evening, and we hope to see you at a future event, y'all.